it's not available to other people. So it's like, I think there's like a sickness that.
What if I told you the most powerful people in America were secretly filmed at parties, just to be controlled for life? Joe Rogan has just dropped the most explosive allegation of his career, claiming that Diddy Combs didn't just throw wild celebrity parties. He orchestrated calculated blackmail operations. And the names? Shocking. Donald Trump, Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, Jay-Z, Leonardo DiCaprio. Rogan says they weren't just guests, they were targets. Tapes were rolling. People were being set up. In this special investigation, we dive into the chilling blueprint of a party culture designed not for pleasure, but for power. Stay with us. What you're about to hear could dismantle legacies. It began, as these things often do, with a seemingly offhand comment, one line, tucked into an episode of one of the most influential podcasts on the planet. Joe Rogan wasn't shouting. He wasn't throwing accusations in a tabloid tone. He was calm, deliberate, almost surgical. But his words landed like a bomb. In less than 10 seconds, Rogan turned the entire celebrity landscape upside down. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. These weren't just parties, he said, voice steady. They were blackmail traps. People weren't just partying. They were being recorded, leveraged, and controlled. The room fell silent. His co-host blinked. The studio, always abuzz with discussion and unfiltered candor, seemed to tighten around the weight of what had just been said. No laughter followed. No pivot to ads or MMA banter. Rogan paused. Then, with chilling clarity, he began to name names. Not fringe influencers. Not C-list nobodies. He named Donald Trump, former president of the United States. Oprah Winfrey, America's moral compass and media titan. Jay-Z, music's most guarded mogul. Leonardo DiCaprio, Hollywood's perennial golden boy. Tyler Perry, the billionaire director and philanthropist with deep political ties. The message wasn't ambiguous. These weren't casual attendees at elite events. According to Rogan, these were participants in events designed not just for pleasure, but for power. And not just power, but blackmail. Footage was allegedly taken. Behavior was captured. Careers and reputations, Rogan hinted, were being quietly held hostage by what happened inside Puff Diddy's most exclusive, invitation-only freak-off parties. He didn't say it to be dramatic. He didn't need to. Because by the time he said it, the Diddy scandal had already exploded into the national consciousness. The trial of Diddy Combs, once merely tabloid fodder, had become a federal firestorm. Allegations of human trafficking, coercion, illegal transportation, and racketeering weren't just whispers, they were courtroom facts. Charges were filed. Witnesses came forward. Investigators uncovered a network of power that seemed to blend celebrity glitz with the machinery of systemic abuse. But until Rogan spoke, the true depth of what those parties may have represented was speculation. Now, the veil had lifted. This wasn't just about what Diddy did. It was about who was there, and why they were there. This video begins where most media coverage ends, right at the heart of the allegations that Joe Rogan has now made public. It's not about salacious headlines. It's not about sensationalizing celebrity culture. It's about the cold, strategic use of private spaces, hidden cameras, and compromised guests to build a modern empire of leverage. Because if what Rogan said is true, then the parties weren't just about excess. They were carefully constructed honey traps. Setups. Traps designed to ensnare the most powerful people on earth in acts so compromising, so outrageous, that silence became the only option. And whoever held the tapes, whoever controlled that footage, controlled everything. The implications are enormous. It means that global decisions, entertainment careers, political influence, and philanthropic empires could all be under invisible threat. If blackmail is the currency behind the curtain, then every public gesture we see could be a performance bought under duress. Let's pause for a moment and ask, why would Joe Rogan, a man who's built his career on authenticity, choose to say this now? He has no incentive to fabricate the story. His empire is secure. His audience is loyal. And his credibility, though polarizing, is rooted in his unfiltered honesty. He is not a man who needs shock value. He is a man who has hosted ex-intelligence officials, presidential candidates, world-renowned scientists, and cultural icons. And when he drops names, people listen. In that episode, Rogan didn't claim to have seen the tapes. He didn't claim to be a victim. What he claimed was something more unnerving. that he had heard from people who were there, people who had seen what went down. And the detail with which he described the setup, the phones confiscated at the door, the strategically placed cameras, the handlers who facilitated the scenes matched eerily with testimony already submitted in Diddy's ongoing trial. Witnesses have testified that guests were encouraged to indulge, that substances were distributed freely, that models, dancers, and high-end escorts were supplied as part of the experience. But as the party escalated, so did the control. Attendees were often too intoxicated to notice the equipment tucked behind one-way glass. Some were led into rooms where they thought privacy was guaranteed, only to be recorded in the most compromising scenarios imaginable. And the result? A vault of footage. A digital dossier of America's elite, locked in moments they could never explain. The kind of leverage that ensures compliance, that demands silence. If even a fraction of this is true, we are no longer talking about celebrity gossip. We are talking about psychological warfare. We are talking about a weaponized form of influence so insidious that it could bend networks, shift headlines, or bury investigations before they even begin. This is not new in history. Intelligence agencies have used similar tactics for decades. But to see it emerge from the private parties of a hip-hop mogul-turned-media baron is unprecedented. So what exactly did Rogan reveal? He said the names. He said the setups. But most importantly, he said what no one else would, that these weren't isolated incidents. This was a system. And that system had rules, patterns, and a purpose. In the following segments, we'll break down each element. We'll explore the nature of Diddy's freak-off parties, how they were planned, who was invited, and what happened once the doors closed. We'll take a closer look at the celebrities named, including their known associations with Diddy, and analyze the timeline of appearances, photo ops, and public denials. We'll dissect what blackmail looks like in the modern age, how it's stored, how it's threatened, and why it's so effective in a world driven by reputation. But before we begin that journey, you have to understand what's at stake. This isn't about scandal. It's about control. This isn't about party gossip. It's about psychological enslavement of public figures whose influence shapes culture, policy, and economy. And most importantly, it's not about whether these parties happened. They did. It's about whether those who attended were willing participants or pawns in a much bigger game. The fact that names like Trump, Oprah, and DiCaprio are now being mentioned in the same breath as blackmail suggests that the walls protecting the elite may finally be cracking. And the fact that Joe Rogan said it on a platform watched by millions means that we are no longer dealing with theory. We are in the territory of exposure. In the hours after the episode aired, social media lit up. Clips of the podcast circulated at lightning speed. Hashtags trended. Speculation exploded. And yet, not a single denial came from the celebrities named. Not a single legal threat. Not a single statement of outrage. Only silence. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than anything else. As this video unfolds, we urge you to watch closely. Not just for the facts. Not just for the names. But for the pattern. Because patterns reveal systems. And once you see the system, you can never unsee it. The word freak off wasn't always associated with corruption and entrapment. In nightlife circles, it was once insider slang, used casually to describe a party that went beyond standard debauchery. Something wilder. Something private. A space without rules, judgment, or consequences. But when Joe Rogan resurrected the term on his podcast and tied it directly to blackmail, surveillance, and Hollywood elites, the word took on a new, disturbing dimension. So what is a freak-off, really? According to Rogan, a freak-off isn't just a party. It's a ritual. A tightly choreographed spectacle, often orchestrated by powerful hosts like Sean Diddy Combs, where the line between indulgence and entrapment disappears. It's a space where the rich, famous, and politically connected feel safe enough to shed their public personas, but where every move, every mistake, is being watched, recorded, and filed away. Joe Rogan painted the picture clearly. These were not wild house parties filled with laughter and music. These were events with a purpose. Carefully selected guest lists, pre-cleared participants, rooms set up like stages. Drugs, alcohol, and sex weren't just available, they were expected. But what attendees didn't always understand was that nothing was private. He explained it simply. The whole thing was designed to make people let go. To create the perfect environment where they'd do something they'd never want seen in public. That's when the cameras turned on. That's a heavy claim. But Rogan didn't stop there. He said he had spoken directly to individuals who'd attended these gatherings. Some were fellow entertainers, others were behind-the-scenes players, security, assistants, people on the periphery who witnessed everything but signed away their voices. A few of them, according to Rogan, were willing to talk because of what's happening now. Diddy's empire is cracking, the court cases are piling up, and the once airtight wall of silence around these events is beginning to leak. At a glance, a freak-off might look like a typical celebrity gathering: private estate, designer outfits, top-shelf liquor, and familiar faces. But deeper in the house, or sometimes off-site entirely, were the real rooms. Enclosed spaces, often soundproofed, always unmonitored by outside eyes. Entry was restricted. Phones were confiscated at the door. Security was told to look the other way. Inside these rooms, things changed. There was no music blasting, no paparazzi, just curated guests, hired participants, and a blend of substances designed to dull judgment and increase risk. Some attendees thought they were entering an exclusive afterparty. Others, Rogan alleged, knew exactly what they were stepping into and had been there before. But whether someone was ignorant or complicit didn't matter. The result was the same. They were filmed. Every encounter, every decision, every violation of image or expectation was captured. Not by iPhones, but by hidden cameras embedded in ceiling fixtures, wall panels, even decorative mirrors. According to Rogan, this wasn't accidental. It was engineered. The ultimate goal wasn't pleasure, it was possession. Because when you have footage of someone powerful in a vulnerable or criminal position, you have leverage that no legal document or financial contract can match. And Diddy, according to multiple sources, was building a vault of leverage. The freak-off wasn't a party. It was a trap, one where the cheese was luxury and the cage was invisible. Joe Rogan has been in the entertainment industry long enough to know how this world works. He's hosted guests from every corner of influence: former CIA operatives, investigative journalists, whistleblowers, and celebrities with long memories. He's heard stories that never made it into headlines. And he understands how the machine feeds on compliance. That's what made his tone so chilling when he spoke about these parties. He didn't laugh. He didn't speculate. He stated it plainly. They thought they were at the top, he said, but they were pawns. And the game was being played 2 floors below them. Rogan's assertion isn't without precedent. Similar allegations have surfaced in other elite circles. The Epstein saga, for example, revealed how private islands and hidden cameras were used to trap guests into silence. But what makes the freak-off scandal so explosive is the scale of celebrity involved and the newness of the venue. These weren't secret meetings with obscure financiers. These were A-listers, household names, presidents, media moguls, cultural icons. And while there's no confirmed footage yet released to the public, the number of people now hinting at its existence is growing. A former audio engineer who worked on a Diddy-sponsored event recently posted, anonymously, about being asked to sweep a venue for recording devices, only to be told later to ignore the built-ins. A celebrity assistant claimed, off-record, that after attending one of Diddy's private events, her employer received a legal threat about images that would never need to see daylight, if the right loyalty was maintained. Rogan's statements gave those whispers a spotlight. And the term freak-off, once an inside joke, has become synonymous with elite corruption. What makes Rogan's commentary so credible is not just the specificity of his claims, but the consistency of his platform. He has never shied away from calling out power. And while critics accuse him of veering into conspiracy, his podcast has become a haven for uncomfortable truths that mainstream media won't touch. But in naming names, Trump, Oprah, Jay-Z, DiCaprio, Perry, he crossed a new line. He didn't just suggest impropriety. He implicated the core of American influence. Why does that matter? Because if true, it means the institutions we trust, entertainment, politics, philanthropy, may be held hostage by secrets traded in private rooms. And those secrets may determine what gets said on camera, what gets canceled, what movements get funded, and what scandals never see the light of day. The term freak-off now carries more than salacious weight. It represents a system of control where every guest risks becoming a puppet and every host a puppeteer. Joe Rogan didn't invent the idea. He simply exposed it. And now, the rest of us are left to ask, how many careers, laws, elections, and cultural trends have been shaped not by ideas, but by the footage no one is allowed to see? In espionage circles, The tactic is known as compromat, compromising material used to influence or manipulate someone into submission. It's not new. For decades, world governments, spy agencies, and criminal organizations have relied on compromat to turn enemies into assets, allies into puppets. But what happens when that same intelligence model is used not in war rooms, but in mansions? Not by secret agencies, but by entertainers and moguls? According to Joe Rogan and a rising number of whistleblowers, that's exactly what was happening behind the velvet curtains of Puff Diddy's so-called freak-off parties. These weren't just extravagant get-togethers for the rich and famous. They were calculated environments designed to dismantle inhibition, strip away reputation, and manufacture vulnerability under controlled conditions and always under watchful eyes. The camera wasn't just in the room. It was the room. So how does a blackmail system of this magnitude even work? It begins with selection. The guest list is never random. Every name is vetted, either someone with current influence, future potential, or known weaknesses. The criteria isn't just fame. It's pliability. If someone is already compromised through addiction, hidden behavior, or financial entanglements, they're ideal. If they aren't yet, but show signs of being corruptible, they're invited anyway. From the outside, the invite is golden. A personal message from Diddy. A private location. No press, no outsiders. The perception is intimacy and exclusivity. To turn it down is to risk exclusion from the power web. To say yes is to enter something much darker than it first appears. Then comes the environment. The venue, often a penthouse, mansion, or yacht, is laid out with meticulous intent. There are security guards, but their instructions are to stay peripheral. There are staff, bartenders, servers, dancers, performers, but many are also watchers, or in some cases, facilitators. Phones are taken. Guests are told this is for privacy. But that privacy only applies to them, not to the hosts. Behind walls, inside mirrors, nested in corners, cameras are already rolling. Not the kind guests would notice. The kind designed to fade into the architecture. Silent. Watching. Recording everything. Next comes disinhibition. This part is strategic. Drinks flow. Drugs appear. Beautiful people circulate with instructions. Conversations are encouraged to escalate into flirtation. Games are played. Some sexual, others psychological. Boundaries are not tested, they're ignored. Guests are told, directly or by example, that they can do anything they want, because in that moment, they feel untouchable. But what they don't realize is that their sense of security is artificial. Every action is being cataloged. Every partner, every conversation, every line crossed. The leverage is already being built. Some of the footage is mundane conversations, laughs, minor indiscretions. But some of it is explicit. Sex acts, assaults, coercion, in some cases, illegal behavior. And once that's on tape, the guest is no longer a guest. They're property. Most never find out. They go home hungover and confused. They remember fragments. Others get a call or message weeks later. A reminder. A hint. You were amazing the other night. So was your friend. That's not a compliment. It's a warning. Because now, compliance becomes instinct. Maybe the guest is a business partner, a media figure, a politician. They're asked to do something small. Defend someone, fund a project, look the other way. If they hesitate, there's always the tape. It doesn't even need to be shown. The suggestion is enough. This is the core of blackmail. Not always a direct threat. Often, just a shadow hanging overhead. An unspoken understanding that everything you do from that moment on serves not your interest, but theirs. According to Rogan's account, this was Diddy's unspoken kingdom. He wasn't collecting guests. He was collecting assets. And those assets could be activated on camera, in court, in business, whenever needed. Rogan didn't speculate on how many tapes exist. He didn't give names of those holding the footage. But the structure he described matches exactly with previous known blackmail models. Jeffrey Epstein's island worked the same way. Invite powerful men. Record them with underage girls. Hold the tape. On the man. Intelligence agencies, from the KGB to the CIA, have used the same strategy. Find the vulnerability. Create the compromise. Then use it quietly, relentlessly. What made Diddy's version so insidious, according to Rogan, is that it was hidden behind music, fashion, and celebrity culture. No one suspects the party. No one suspects the performer. And those who did, they stayed silent. Why didn't anyone blow the whistle earlier? Because everyone was scared. One guest risks exposing themselves. One insider loses everything. And those in control always seem untouchable until the system fails. That system is now failing. The Diddy trial isn't just a legal case, it's a crack in the dam. Former employees, assistants, victims, some protected by immunity deals, are stepping forward. They're talking about the cameras, the drugs, the coercion, and yes, the footage. So far, no tapes have been made public, but sources close to the investigation say digital evidence is being examined. Servers, hard drives, archived files recovered through subpoenas and forensic recovery. If even one of them contains what Rogan described, the fallout will be nuclear. Not just for Diddy, but for everyone caught in the frame. The blackmail blueprint Rogan described is not fiction. It's a methodology. It's what happens when power is unchecked, when fame becomes a shield, and when every room is rigged before the party even starts. And while the celebrities he named remain silent, the question lingers louder each day. What happens if the tapes are real? Of all the names Joe Rogan mentioned during his jaw-dropping segment about Puff Diddy's freak-off parties, none reverberated louder than Donald Trump. A billionaire businessman, reality television icon, and 45th President of the United States, Trump has lived his entire adult life in the glare of tabloid lights and public scrutiny. Yet nothing, absolutely nothing, has carried the shadowed implications of what Rogan just said. According to Rogan, Trump wasn't merely adjacent to the chaos, he was present. Not just a name on an old guest list. Not just a figure in a photo from a gala. A participant. A man who, like the others, may have been inside one of those camera-laced rooms, unaware or unconcerned that his every move was being captured with strategic precision. For anyone familiar with the Trump-Diddy dynamic, the connection isn't new. In fact, it dates back decades. Both men climbed their respective ladders in the New York scene of the 1980s and 1990s, Trump via real estate and tabloid notoriety, Diddy via music, fashion, and culture. Their orbits overlapped at fundraisers, modeling events, and lavish celebrity functions. They shared mutual acquaintances in media, music, and entertainment. Their names appeared together in Vanity Fair guest lists and Page Six gossip. At first glance, it seemed like nothing more than proximity, two titans moving through the same decadent arenas. But when examined through the lens of what Rogan has revealed, the frequency of those intersections takes on a different weight. Numerous photographs exist of Trump and Diddy standing side by side. One such image, from a charity gala in Manhattan circa 2003, shows the two men grinning under chandeliers, champagne in hand. Another, from a high-end fashion event, captures them laughing over whispered conversation. These photos once suggested power and wealth. Today, they are potential artifacts of conspiracy. But being in the same room isn't a crime. So the question becomes, is there any evidence, direct or circumstantial, that Trump attended one of Diddy's now notorious freak-off parties? There's no confirmed footage, at least not yet. No direct eyewitness testimony has placed Trump inside one of those rooms. But here's what we do know. Donald Trump was known to frequent parties that mirrored the very architecture Rogan described. High-end gatherings at private estates with no phones allowed, where alcohol and models flowed freely, and where discretion was currency. His friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, for example, is a matter of public record. He once told New York Magazine, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." That quote, long since weaponized in public debate, resurfaced during Epstein's trials. There's also the issue of Trump's own history of being recorded. Multiple individuals within his former inner circle have revealed that Trump, throughout his real estate and television career, maintained a well-documented obsession with loyalty and optics, but was at times careless when he believed he was among allies. That pattern fits exactly into the profile of someone who could be manipulated at a freak-off party. High profile, accustomed to special treatment, and convinced of invincibility. In Rogan's version of events, the blackmail tapes weren't meant to be used immediately. They were insurance policies, assets, weapons kept in reserve for moments of defiance or disagreement. If Trump attended one of these parties, whether as a willing participant or a misled guest, then whoever possesses that footage might hold power beyond financial leverage. They might hold political leverage. Imagine the weight of that scenario. A sitting or former U.S. president, unknowingly recorded in compromising acts, subject to control from someone outside the national security apparatus. This would not be mere scandal. It would be national security vulnerability. And that's where this story ceases to be tabloid fodder and becomes something far more dangerous. Trump, throughout his presidency, was accused by opponents of being compromised by Russia, by Saudi Arabia, by special interests. But none of those accusations had direct, verified visual evidence. If a tape were to surface showing him at one of Diddy's freak-off parties, the fallout would dwarf any scandal in American political history. Even without a tape, the insinuation alone is destabilizing. That's the genius of the freak-off setup. Once the names are out, Trump, Oprah, DiCaprio, Perry, Jay-Z, the damage is done. Their silence is damning. Their denials, if they ever come, will be dissected for tone and timing. And the longer they wait, the more people believe the worst. For Trump, this is a powder keg. His 2024 campaign, already controversial, is operating under extreme scrutiny. He faces multiple indictments, civil judgments, and endless media critique. The last thing his political machine needs is a bombshell that links him to sex parties, blackmail schemes, and surveillance traps hosted by a man now on trial for trafficking and racketeering. And yet, Trump has remained silent. No tweet, no statement, no threats of legal action against Rogan. That silence could be strategic or fearful. Trump has never been shy about slamming critics. From Rosie O'Donnell to entire news outlets, he retaliates quickly when he feels slighted. But when someone hits too close to the truth, he's been known to go dark. That was his strategy in the early days of the Access Hollywood tape. It was also his strategy when the Epstein-Maxwell accusations began swirling. Could that be what we're seeing now? If so, then Joe Rogan's revelation has done more than stir up controversy. It may have activated the very control system he was trying to expose. Because if Trump is compromised and remains silent to avoid activating a release clause, then it means the blackmail has already worked. There's one final piece of this puzzle. When Rogan named Trump, he didn't do so lightly. He framed it with precision. He wasn't accusing. He was revealing. That framing, calm, rational, informed, was what made the statement land with such terrifying clarity. It wasn't rage. It was regret. Because if a former president can be pulled into something this dark, then there is no ceiling, no boundary, no immunity. What happens next depends on two things: whether more evidence surfaces and whether anyone has the courage to admit what really went on behind those doors. When Joe Rogan uttered the name Oprah Winfrey during his breakdown of Diddy's freak-off parties, the atmosphere in the room changed. His voice didn't tremble, but even he hesitated before saying it. This wasn't a YouTuber chasing views or a provocateur tossing out rumors. This was Rogan, methodical, calculated, naming the woman who for decades has been the most powerful female figure in American media, the queen of daytime television, the billionaire philanthropist, the tastemaker who could launch books, presidents, and global movements with a single sentence. So why is she being mentioned in the same breath as blackmail, hidden cameras, and underground parties orchestrated by a man now standing trial for trafficking and racketeering? That question has rocked both fans and media insiders, because Oprah Winfrey has long been shielded by her cultivated aura of empathy, wisdom, and restraint. Yet behind that carefully maintained image lies a string of troubling relationships, ambiguous decisions, and, now, a connection to the most dangerous scandal in modern celebrity history. Let's start with what's publicly known. Oprah and Diddy have crossed paths countless times. Charity galas, award shows, private retreats. Their names have appeared side by side on elite guest lists since the early 2000s. Diddy has praised Oprah publicly for her business acumen and cultural influence. Oprah, while never appearing overtly close to Diddy in interviews, has never distanced herself from him either. Photographs exist. Multiple red carpet shots. Behind-the-scenes footage at exclusive events. A 2010 shot captures Oprah at a high-ticket fundraiser hosted in New York, Diddy seated just 3 chairs away. That event was billed as a private celebration for cultural icons. Attendees signed non-disclosure agreements. No full guest list was ever published. But proximity doesn't equal participation. So what makes Rogan's claim so explosive? It wasn't that Oprah attended. It was that she watched. Rogan stated that, according to one source close to Diddy's operations, Oprah was present at one of the freak-off gatherings, not as a participant in the darker acts, but as an observer. Not involved in the abuse, but not intervening either. She watched, Rogan said. She knew what was happening. And she didn't stop it. That sentence alone flips the table on everything Oprah has built. Because Oprah hasn't just sold herself as a figure of success. She's sold herself as a moral compass. Her platform is rooted in empathy, justice, and advocacy. Her interviews with abuse survivors, addicts, the misunderstood, have made her a trusted voice on healing and accountability. She's been the face of child protection initiatives, women's empowerment, and anti-trafficking campaigns. To even suggest she stood by as coercion took place would be to shatter the foundation of her brand. And yet, this isn't the first time Oprah's name has quietly surfaced in darker contexts. Over the years, critics have pointed to her connection with figures later exposed for deeply abusive behavior. Her friendship with Harvey Weinstein, long chronicled, ended only when his crimes became undeniable. Oprah appeared at numerous Weinstein-hosted events, gave him public praise, and even introduced him to rising actresses. One of those actresses, Katie Noble, later accused Weinstein of assault. She also alleged that Oprah and Naomi Campbell introduced her to him, indirectly facilitating the encounter. Oprah has denied wrongdoing. She said she had no knowledge of Weinstein's actions and condemned him publicly once his crimes were proven. Still, the pattern emerges again here, with Diddy. The allegations surrounding the freak-off parties include underage victims, coerced participants, drugging, and secret recordings used for blackmail. For Rogan to suggest Oprah saw any part of this, even once, and remained silent is to cast her as an enabler in a system she publicly claims to oppose. The silence from Oprah's team since Rogan made his claim has only deepened suspicion. No legal threat. No cease and desist. No interview or statement of denial. Just silence. Why? Perhaps legal advisors are strategizing. Perhaps they fear that denial would provoke further investigation. Or perhaps, and this is the darker possibility, there's truth to what Rogan said, and any public statement could unravel a legacy years in the making. Because if Oprah was ever truly in the room, if she witnessed the kind of setups now being described in court filings, then even passive observation becomes complicity. And in the court of public opinion, complicity can be fatal. What would it mean if one of the world's most trusted figures allowed abuse to continue unchallenged? What would it mean if she helped, knowingly or not, shield the behavior by her mere presence? Consider the effect of a guest like Oprah at such an event. Her presence offers legitimacy. It tells attendees, consciously or not, that this is safe. That if Oprah is here, it must be okay. That impression alone could be used to coax reluctant guests into participating in something they might otherwise resist. And if that moment is captured on tape, if the blackmail footage includes footage of Oprah at the periphery, it becomes all the more unthinkable. Because now, the scandal isn't just about who was caught in compromising acts. It's about who could have stopped them and didn't. That raises another question. Could Oprah herself be under the thumb of blackmail? It's a disturbing thought, but if the freak-off model worked as Rogan described, even bystanders weren't immune. A conversation recorded without knowledge. A glance captured on camera. Even the optics of association could be twisted into threats. In that world, leverage doesn't require guilt, only the fear of perception. Rogan didn't elaborate on what exactly Oprah saw, nor did he provide time, place, or secondary sources. But his decision to name her, so directly, so publicly, was not random. It was calculated. And the backlash was immediate. Social media erupted. Longtime fans called it a lie. Others pointed out inconsistencies in Oprah's past relationships. The divide between worship and wariness has never been wider. But again, no denial. And in this kind of scandal, silence is a currency. It can mean power or fear. What happens next will determine whether Oprah's name survives this moment. If she responds, whether by lawsuit, statement, or denial, it may open the door to investigation. If she stays silent, it may harden suspicion permanently. But what cannot be denied is this. The trust the public once held in untouchable icons is crumbling. And if Rogan's claim is even partially accurate, then the woman once seen as the moral heartbeat of American culture may have to explain how she ended up on the wrong side of history and why she didn't speak when it mattered most. When Joe Rogan dropped Tyler Perry's name into the swirling chaos of his revelations about Diddy's blackmail-fueled freak-off parties, it caught many by surprise. Unlike some of the other figures listed, Donald Trump, Oprah Winfrey, Jay-Z, Tyler Perry has largely avoided controversy, steering a public persona built on faith, resilience, and uplifting Black narratives. He's the man behind Medea, the media mogul who built his own studio in Atlanta and a close friend to some of the most powerful figures in entertainment and politics. But it is precisely because of this carefully curated image that Rogan's accusation lands with such force. If even Tyler Perry, Hollywood's cleanest billionaire, was in those rooms, watching or participating or facilitating, then the depth of the scandal cuts deeper than anyone imagined. So what is Tyler Perry's actual connection to Diddy? While the two men operate in different entertainment ecosystems, Perry as a writer, director, producer of emotionally charged films and television, Diddy as a mogul of music and nightlife. Their paths have crossed more than once. Both are fixtures in elite black celebrity circles. Both have hosted and attended invite-only galas. Both have supported causes aligned with high-net-worth philanthropy and influence building. And both have a long-standing, deeply loyal connection to Oprah Winfrey. Perry has often spoken about Oprah as a mentor. She supported him in his early days. She helped him navigate Hollywood gatekeeping. They've done joint interviews, business ventures, and consistently praise each other in public. When Perry launched his own network partnership, it was seen as an extension of Oprah's legacy. But where Oprah goes, so too, by proximity, does Tyler Perry. That's why Rogan's implication is so difficult to ignore. According to Rogan, Perry was known at some of the freak-off events. Not always a direct participant, but involved enough that his name surfaced repeatedly in conversations with insiders who attended or helped organize these parties. What does known mean in this context? Rogan didn't accuse Perry of criminal behavior. He didn't say Perry was caught on tape or engaged in coercion. But he did say Perry was part of the social infrastructure that surrounded Diddy's empire, an insider who, if not complicit, was at least aware. This alone has triggered a wave of backlash and disbelief, because Tyler Perry has spent the last 2 decades branding himself as the moral alternative to Hollywood rot. His films, though polarizing in critical circles, have always centered on family, forgiveness, and spiritual redemption. He's publicly supported survivors of abuse. He's funded shelters. He's taken in Meghan Markle and Prince Harry during their exile from royal life. He is, for many, a figure of safety. But what if that's the reason he was so valuable to the freak-off operation? One of the key themes emerging from this scandal is the weaponization of trust. As Rogan suggested in his segment, powerful guests were more likely to attend if someone they respected was already involved. If Tyler Perry was at the event, laughing, drinking, calm, then it must be okay. If he vouched for it, even implicitly, then no danger must be present. That's how social camouflage works. You don't need to be the one holding the camera. You just need to be the one who makes the guests lower their guard. And in Perry's case, that ability is unparalleled. He is not just liked. He is revered. He is the success story, homeless to Hollywood, outsider to billionaire. And with that reverence comes blind trust. If Rogan's sources are accurate, that trust was quietly leveraged. We must also consider the role of real estate. Tyler Perry's properties, particularly his sprawling Atlanta compound, have been described by those familiar with them as ideal for privacy. One insider, speaking anonymously to a podcast following Rogan's claim, noted that one of Diddy's off-record parties took place not at his own mansion, but at a famous black filmmaker's estate outside L.A. While no names were confirmed, speculation turned quickly toward Perry, who owns multiple estates, including one in Beverly Hills and one just outside Malibu. Could his homes have been lent out? Could events have taken place under his name, without his direct involvement? Or was his presence more active? Another wrinkle lies in Perry's notoriously secretive personal life. He's intensely private, rarely seen outside curated appearances. He avoids scandal and keeps inner-circle loyalty tight. That privacy, while admirable, also means there are fewer ways to verify or deny his involvement. No rogue assistants leaking information. No staff testimonies. Just walls and NDAs. So far, Perry has issued no statement about Rogan's allegation. No denial. No legal notice. Just silence. This mirrors the responses from the other figures named: Trump, Oprah, DiCaprio, all of whom seem to be holding their breath, waiting to see whether footage leaks or whether public interest moves on. But in Perry's case, the stakes are arguably higher. Not because of legal risk, but because of reputational collapse. His fan base is fiercely loyal. His productions are often faith-driven. His philanthropic work has helped thousands. But all of that rests on a single belief: that Tyler Perry is who he says he is. If it turns out he stood by while Diddy weaponized intimacy and excess to capture blackmail footage, that belief is shattered. Even worse, if it's revealed that he provided space, cover, or silence in exchange for protection or favor, the fallout won't just be professional. It will be existential. Rogan did not offer proof. But his pattern is clear. He only speaks when sources align. And in naming Perry, he has set a fire to a legacy many believed was bulletproof. Could it be a misunderstanding? Could Perry have attended a single event, unaware of what was happening in another room? Yes, that's possible. But in the court of public opinion, association is often guilt enough. And in a scandal built entirely on who knew what and when, silence quickly becomes its own confession. Tyler Perry may believe his reputation will outlast the rumors. But reputations are built on perception. And right now, perception is shifting. When Joe Rogan placed Jay-Z among the names allegedly present at Diddy's freak-off events, the reaction was less of shock and more of calculation. That's the power of Jay-Z's brand. Mysterious, controlled, always several moves ahead. Unlike the bombast of Trump or the emotional intimacy of Oprah, Jay-Z has built a reputation on quiet dominance. He's the king who rarely speaks. But when he does, the world listens. So to have his name uttered in the same breath as blackmail, hidden cameras, and entrapment isn't just a threat to his public image, it's a potential breach in the walls he's built around himself for over 2 decades. Jay-Z and Diddy are not casual acquaintances. They are contemporaries, collaborators, co-architects of hip-hop's rise from the streets to the Forbes list. Their business paths have intersected repeatedly, through music, fashion, nightlife, and tech. They've sat on the same panels, hosted each other's parties, and invested in similar circles. Photographs of Jay-Z and Diddy stretch back more than 20 years. From white parties in the Hamptons to post-Grammy celebrations in Beverly Hills, the two moguls are often seen toasting one another in rooms filled with industry elites and celebrity hangers-on. Their shared philosophy, turning street credibility into global capital, made them twin symbols of modern black wealth. But beneath that surface lies a more complex dynamic. Jay-Z is known for playing the long game. He rarely comments on controversies. He rarely gets caught up in beef. When others flame out, Jay-Z tightens his grip. That silence, that control, has often been praised as business savvy. But in the context of Rogan's revelations, it raises a chilling possibility. Was his silence protection or complicity? Rogan did not go into specific detail regarding Jay-Z's role in the freak-off events. He didn't say what Jay-Z did, only that he was there. That his name, like the others, came up from multiple sources who had insider access to what those events really were, blackmail operations disguised as indulgent parties. If true, then Jay-Z's strategic invisibility wasn't accidental, it was engineered. Because if there's one thing blackmailers value, it's predictability. A participant who won't talk. A guest who knows the rules. Someone who can be counted on to neither deny nor confirm. Because that alone maintains the control. Jay-Z's presence, in that case, would serve as a signal. To new guests, if he's here, it must be legit. To organizers, if he's quiet, the system is secure. And that's where things get dangerous. Jay-Z's image has, in many ways, transcended music. He's a venture capitalist, a streaming executive, a cultural gatekeeper. His silence carries more weight than most people's megaphones. So if that silence was bought, or worse, earned through footage, it would mean one of the most powerful men in modern entertainment is not steering the machine, but chained to it. There are patterns that reinforce suspicion. Jay-Z has had long-standing ties to people later exposed for manipulative or abusive behavior. His early affiliation with R. Kelly, for example, was once brushed aside as musical partnership. But in hindsight, it raised eyebrows. Why collaborate with someone whose predatory behavior was whispered about even then? When questioned about the fallout, Jay-Z gave no apology, no disavowal. He simply moved on. Likewise, his relationship with Diddy never faltered, not during rumors, lawsuits, or now. Even as Diddy stands trial on charges involving trafficking and coercion, Jay-Z has not made a single statement about Diddy's legal troubles. No support, no distance, just silence. That silence, once interpreted as class or discipline, now looks tactical. Because if Diddy's freak-off operations were designed to entrap and record, and if Jay-Z was even once present in a room where such recordings occurred, then his silence may not be strategy, it may be survival. It's also important to understand how Jay-Z's empire depends on narrative. He is not just a businessman. He is a brand. His marriage to Beyoncé, his investments in reform, his promotion of Black ownership. These elements are pillars in a story of transformation and leadership. But if tapes exist, if there is even a single clip of Jay-Z in a situation that compromises that image, the consequences will be catastrophic. Not just for him, for his family, for his businesses, for the artists under his label. Because in the blackmail economy, one slip can destroy decades of work. One leak can tear down empires. Jay-Z may not have known he was being recorded. Or perhaps he did. Perhaps, like others, he weighed the risk and chose to believe in silence. Maybe he told himself it was just a party, that everyone was consenting, that cameras were a myth. But now that the curtain is lifting, every decision he made in those rooms, and outside of them, will be questioned. Why did he never speak against Diddy? Why has he remained so close to someone now under federal investigation? Why is there no statement denying Rogan's claim? Because a simple denial, if true, would be the logical first step. Instead, the silence continues. And with every hour, the theory that Jay-Z is more than just an attendee, that he may be enmeshed in the structure of this system, gains credibility. There's one more angle to consider. Rogan's podcast doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's watched by millions. When he names someone, that name echoes. If Jay-Z were innocent, a legal threat would have already arrived. A retraction demanded. A counter-narrative launched. None of that has happened. Instead, journalists are beginning to revisit old footage. Interviews. Party photos. Guest lists, audio tapes. They are looking for patterns, for evidence, for the moment when the myth of untouchable genius becomes the reality of compromised power. And if those patterns hold, if witnesses corroborate, if digital evidence surfaces, then the question won't just be what Jay-Z did. It will be what he helped protect. Of all the names Joe Rogan mentioned in his startling exposé, Leonardo DiCaprio was perhaps the most culturally curious. Not because of who he is. DiCaprio's fame is undisputed, but because of what he represents. For over 20 years, Leonardo DiCaprio has been the embodiment of untouchable Hollywood glamour, Oscar-winning actor, environmental activist, global heartthrob, and consistent fixture on the world's most exclusive party lists. But the persona that once made him so desirable to fans and brands alike may now place him squarely at the heart of a dark and evolving scandal. Joe Rogan's mention of DiCaprio didn't come with long explanations. He didn't recount stories or describe encounters in detail. He did what he always does when making a high-risk claim. He dropped the name quietly, but deliberately, letting the implications speak for themselves. In the context of blackmail-fueled freak-off parties hosted by Diddy, complete with cameras, manipulation, and post-party leverage, the presence of DiCaprio raises questions no publicist can easily spin. Let's begin with what we know. Leonardo DiCaprio is no stranger to celebrity excess. For decades, he's been associated with luxurious yacht parties, VIP-only island getaways, and international club circuits. His group of close friends, sometimes referred to in media circles as the Wolf Pack, has included A-list actors, models, moguls, and nightlife veterans. He's known for booking entire floors of hotels. Entire clubs have closed their doors to outsiders so DiCaprio and his circle could party undisturbed. That's not gossip, it's documented fact. Photos of DiCaprio attending parties with Diddy stretch back to the early 2000s. They've been spotted together at Cannes, in Ibiza, in New York, and during late-night events hosted at penthouses and luxury lounges across Europe and the United States. In a 2013 interview, Diddy praised DiCaprio's ability to turn any room into a celebration. That same year, the two co-hosted a lavish party in Miami during Art Basel, one of the most exclusive social events in the world. DiCaprio, in other words, was not a guest on the edge of this world. He was in the center of it. But does that mean he participated in the kind of events Rogan described? Not necessarily. Proximity doesn't confirm guilt. DiCaprio's public persona, while tied to nightlife and beautiful women, has never intersected with criminality. There have been no allegations of abuse, no public scandals involving coercion, and no lawsuits targeting his behavior. His name has rarely even come up in industry feuds or tabloid warfare. In fact, his avoidance of controversy has been considered by many to be part of his PR genius. But therein lies the problem. If DiCaprio was in the room, no one would question it. His presence would elevate the event. His attendance would signal comfort, safety, normalcy. In the blackmail architecture Rogan describes, that's exactly what's needed to draw others in. The idea that someone like DiCaprio is there makes everyone else drop their guard. And once that guard is down, the cameras roll. Even more troubling is the nature of DiCaprio's private gatherings. Over the years, insiders have described certain DiCaprio-hosted parties as hyper-exclusive. No phones allowed. NDAs required. Guests flown in on private jets. Models imported from agencies with no questions asked. Those stories were usually shared as flattering, proof of DiCaprio's status as the ultimate Hollywood insider. But now, through the lens of Rogan's claims, they take on a different tone. Why the phone bans? Why the NDAs? Why the secrecy? Could it be that DiCaprio himself had no idea he was being watched? That he, too, was a pawn in someone else's operation? Perhaps. But even if he was unaware, it doesn't remove the impact of his presence in those spaces. It only reinforces his role as bait, glamorous, desirable, and devastatingly effective. There's also the question of his deep ties to global power circles. DiCaprio isn't just a movie star. He's a climate advocate who attends Davos. He's partnered with billionaires, philanthropists, and politicians. He was deeply involved in environmental projects funded through private grants and major foundations. In 2016, he faced scrutiny for receiving donations from Malaysian financier Joe Low, who was later accused of masterminding one of the largest financial frauds in history. DiCaprio returned the donations. He distanced himself. But once again, the pattern was clear. Leonardo finds himself in elite circles that occasionally rot from within. So what happens if footage of DiCaprio ever surfaces? What if, despite his silence, a tape appears showing him inside one of the rooms Rogan described? Even if the footage shows nothing criminal, just him talking, laughing, or casually interacting, it would be enough to ruin years of image curation. It would lead to questions about what he saw, what he knew, and what he ignored. In today's media climate, guilt by association carries weight. And like the others named, Trump, Oprah, Jay-Z, DiCaprio has remained silent. No tweet, no statement, no legal denial. This isn't uncommon for him. DiCaprio rarely addresses rumors. He avoids interviews unless it's to promote a film. But that silence, once interpreted as mystery or class, now feels evasive. Because silence in the face of blackmail accusations isn't neutral. It's strategic. It allows the conversation to burn out or shift. But this time, the fire isn't going out. It's spreading. DiCaprio's reputation as a man who moves above the fray is being tested in real time. And the longer he avoids addressing the Rogan claims, the more people will begin asking. What did Leo know? What did he see? And why is he refusing to talk? If the stories are true, if the events happened the way insiders and now Joe Rogan described them, then somewhere, there are tapes, video, audio, digital files containing scenes powerful enough to end careers, collapse empires, or trigger federal investigations. But more than that, these tapes would be the smoking gun, not just of depravity, but of intentional, systemic blackmail. And yet, to date, not a single frame has been leaked. No clips, no screenshots, no verified recordings. So where are they? This is the question that now looms over the Diddy scandal like a loaded weapon. Because in a world where information travels at light speed, where leaks are often instant and irreversible, the silence around these supposed recordings feels less like absence and more like suppression. To understand the full gravity of what these tapes represent, we first need to understand how such material could be captured without detection and why it was allegedly so effective in keeping high-profile attendees silent for years. The parties Joe Rogan described, based on the testimony of those who say they were there, were wired from the inside out. Surveillance equipment wasn't duct taped to ceilings or hidden behind potted plants. It was professionally installed, embedded into light fixtures, security panels, air vents, and wall decor. The technology wasn't amateur. It was commercial grade, or in some reports, military adjacent. In the most exclusive venues, mansions, penthouses, yachts, rooms were custom modified to serve dual purposes. What appeared to be high-end lounges or spa rooms were in fact stages. The drinks and entertainment weren't there for atmosphere. They were the setup. Phones were confiscated at the door. Guests were told this was for privacy. So no one's image would end up on social media. But in reality, this move served a dual purpose. It disarmed guests from recording, while allowing hosts to record everything unopposed. If even one of these parties was configured this way, the footage collected could amount to hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of compromising material. Now consider this. Who would hold onto something that explosive and not use it? That's where the nature of blackmail enters a more chilling realm. In the modern era, blackmail isn't always about the money. It's about influence. It's about ensuring compliance, not just today, but indefinitely. The person who holds the footage doesn't want to destroy the target. They want to own them. Rogan's assertion that these freak-off parties were designed as traps, not celebrations, fits the operational pattern of psychological coercion. The guests weren't just drunk or high. They were being directed into scenarios that could later be used to control them. Sex acts, drug use, potentially illegal behavior, all recorded, all cataloged. So where are these tapes now? There are three dominant theories. Theory 1. The private vault. Some believe Diddy, paranoid and obsessively protective of his empire, kept the material close. The tapes, or the servers storing them, never left his personal control. That would mean physical hard drives stored at one of his properties, in a secure room, under lock and biometric key. If this is true, the FBI may already have the tapes. As part of the racketeering and trafficking charges now facing Diddy, investigators have raided multiple properties. Reports suggest that hard drives and digital storage devices were seized. While authorities haven't confirmed the contents, leaks indicate they're combing through encrypted files. If the tapes exist on those devices, it's only a matter of time before they surface. Theory 2. The offshore network. A more complicated theory suggests that Diddy outsourced the storage. Perhaps recognizing the danger of holding incriminating footage on U.S. soil, the material was allegedly uploaded to servers offshore, in countries with lenient data privacy laws. Panama, the Seychelles, parts of Eastern Europe. This method would align with tactics used by blackmail operations globally. Keep the data physically distant and legally unreachable. Only those with clearance or passwords can access it. This kind of setup isn't just about keeping secrets. It's about guaranteeing long-term safety. Under this theory, the tapes are likely in the hands of trusted tech intermediaries, not Diddy directly. This creates a kind of insurance policy. If Diddy goes down, someone else can pull the trigger, leaking the footage selectively, or using it as leverage in other arenas. Theory 3. The tapes were destroyed. Some insist the tapes were real, but are now gone. Perhaps Diddy, sensing the walls closing in, destroyed the footage. Wiped drives. Shredded backups. This scenario is both comforting and terrifying. Comforting, because it would mean no one else can be hurt. Terrifying, because if Diddy once had control over politicians, celebrities, and CEOs via this footage, what decisions did he influence? What policies, alliances, or legal outcomes were shaped not by debate, but by fear of exposure? Even if the tapes are gone, the damage they caused may remain forever. There is also the legal question of admissibility. If federal investigators obtain the tapes, either from a raid or through cooperating witnesses, can they be used in court? That depends on a number of factors: how the footage was obtained, whether consent was given, if crimes are depicted, and whether the footage involves underage individuals or illegal acts. If the tapes contain evidence of non-consensual acts or minors, they instantly become criminal evidence and could trigger new charges against Diddy or others. But if they show legal, yet morally compromising behavior, then their use becomes trickier. Prosecutors may use the threat of exposure to secure plea deals or leverage cooperation, but public release becomes a political decision. So far, none of the celebrities named by Rogan, Trump, Oprah, Jay-Z, DiCaprio, Perry, have issued public statements. None have threatened legal action. None have denied attending any of these events, which raises a disturbing possibility. Maybe they know the tapes exist. Maybe silence is their only option. Because here's the truth about modern blackmail. It doesn't always require distribution. Just the threat. Just the whisper that footage might leak is enough to keep empires in line. We live in a world where images travel faster than facts. A 5-second clip, out of context, can destroy a legacy. A blurry screenshot, if circulated at the right time, can end a campaign or collapse a billion-dollar brand. If someone holds the tapes, they hold history. And if the tapes exist and they get out, the public will finally see what power really looks like behind closed doors. What did Leo know? What did he see? And why is he refusing to talk? If the stories are true, if the events happened the way insiders and now Joe Rogan described them, then somewhere, there are tapes, video, audio, digital files containing scenes powerful enough to end careers, collapse empires, or trigger federal investigations. But more than that, these tapes would be the smoking gun, not just of depravity, but of intentional, systemic blackmail. And yet, to date, not a single frame has been leaked. No clips, no screenshots, no verified recordings. So where are they? This is the question that now looms over the Diddy scandal like a loaded weapon. Because in a world where information travels at light speed, where leaks are often instant and irreversible, the silence around these supposed recordings feels less like absence and more like suppression. To understand the full gravity of what these tapes represent, we first need to understand how such material could be captured without detection and why it was allegedly so effective in keeping high-profile attendees silent for years. The parties Joe Rogan described, based on the testimony of those who say they were there, were wired from the inside out. Surveillance equipment wasn't duct taped to ceilings or hidden behind potted plants. It was professionally installed, embedded into light fixtures, security panels, air vents, and wall decor. The technology wasn't amateur. It was commercial grade, or in some reports, military adjacent. In the most exclusive venues, mansions, penthouses, yachts, rooms were custom modified to serve dual purposes. What appeared to be high-end lounges or spa rooms were in fact stages. The drinks and entertainment weren't there for atmosphere. They were the setup. Phones were confiscated at the door. Guests were told this was for privacy, so no one's image would end up on social media. But in reality, this move served a dual purpose. It disarmed guests from recording, while allowing hosts to record everything unopposed. If even one of these parties was configured this way, the footage collected could amount to hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of compromising material. Now consider this. Who would hold onto something that explosive and not use it? That's where the nature of blackmail enters a more chilling realm. In the modern era, blackmail isn't always about the money. It's about influence. It's about ensuring compliance, not just today, but indefinitely. The person who holds the footage doesn't want to destroy the target. They want to own them. Rogan's assertion that these freak-off parties were designed as traps, not celebrations, fits the operational pattern of psychological coercion. The guests weren't just drunk or high. They were being directed into scenarios that could later be used to control them. Sex acts, drug use, potentially illegal behavior, all recorded, all cataloged. So where are these tapes now? There are three dominant theories. Theory 1, the private vault. Some believe Diddy, paranoid and obsessively protective of his empire, kept the material close. The tapes, or the servers storing them, never left his personal control. That would mean physical hard drives stored at one of his properties, in a secure room, under lock and biometric key. If this is true, the FBI may already have the tapes. As part of the racketeering and trafficking charges now facing Diddy, investigators have raided multiple properties. Reports suggest that hard drives and digital storage devices were seized. While authorities haven't confirmed the contents, leaks indicate they're combing through encrypted files. If the tapes exist on those devices, it's only a matter of time before they surface. Theory 2, the offshore network. A more complicated theory suggests that Diddy outsourced the storage. Perhaps recognizing the danger of holding incriminating footage on U.S. soil, the material was allegedly uploaded to servers offshore, in countries with lenient data privacy laws. Panama, the Seychelles, parts of Eastern Europe. This method would align with tactics used by blackmail operations globally. Keep the data physically distant and legally unreachable. Only those with clearance or passwords can access it. This kind of setup isn't just about keeping secrets. It's about guaranteeing long-term safety. Under this theory, the tapes are likely in the hands of trusted tech intermediaries, not Diddy directly. This creates a kind of insurance policy. If Diddy goes down, someone else can pull the trigger, leaking the footage selectively, or using it as leverage in other arenas. Theory 3, the tapes were destroyed. Some insist the tapes were real, but are now gone. Perhaps Diddy, sensing the walls closing in, destroyed the footage, wiped drives, shredded backups. This scenario is both comforting and terrifying. Comforting, because it would mean no one else can be hurt. Terrifying, because if Diddy once had control over politicians, celebrities, and CEOs via this footage, what decisions did he influence? What policies, alliances, or legal outcomes were shaped not by debate, but by fear of exposure? Even if the tapes are gone, the damage they caused may remain forever. There is also the legal question of admissibility. If federal investigators obtain the tapes, either from a raid or through cooperating witnesses, can they be used in court? That depends on a number of factors: how the footage was obtained, whether consent was given, if crimes are depicted, and whether the footage involves underage individuals or illegal acts. If the tapes contain evidence of non-consensual acts or minors, they instantly become criminal evidence and could trigger new charges against Diddy or others. But if they show legal, yet morally compromising behavior, then their use becomes trickier. Prosecutors may use the threat of exposure to secure plea deals or leverage cooperation, but public release becomes a political decision. So far, none of the celebrities named by Rogan, Trump, Oprah, Jay-Z, DiCaprio, Perry, have issued public statements. None have threatened legal action. None have denied attending any of these events, which raises a disturbing possibility. Maybe they know the tapes exist. Maybe silence is their only option. Because here's the truth about modern blackmail: it doesn't always require distribution. Just the threat, just the whisper that footage might leak is enough to keep empires in line. We live in a world where images travel faster than facts. A 5-second clip, out of context, can destroy a legacy. A blurry screenshot, if circulated at the right time, can end a campaign or collapse a billion-dollar brand. If someone holds the tapes, they hold history. And if the tapes exist and they get out, the public will finally see what power really looks like behind closed doors.